Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about auditory processing. Auditory processing is the ability to understand and interpret information that we hear. So it sounds pretty simple, right? Well, there's lots of different components of auditory processing, and in case you hadn't seen my previous video that mentioned all of the sensory systems, I will review some auditory processing pretty quickly here. So auditory processing is how we perceive sounds and identify them and recognize them as words, melodies, or noises through vibrations or changes in pressure that are received through our ears. So there are many characteristics of auditory processing such as volume, tone, timbre, duration, etc. that allows us to discriminate, detect, and interpret sounds in our environment. And this includes interpreting information people are telling us and storing it into memory for later use. Our auditory system is also able to filter out unnecessary and necessary auditory information that we hear when we need to direct our attention to one person or to a task at hand. Maybe we need to direct our attention to some music that we're hearing, etc. So your auditory system right now is working very hard to listen to just my voice and not the music behind it. Auditory processing can be really tough, and sometimes children have either hyper or hyposensitivity to auditory input and have difficulty organizing it properly. So a child who has auditory hypersensitivity may cover their ears excessively when noises seem too loud. For example, if there's a loud bang from some construction going on or from a firework, your child could become very easily distressed. They may be hypersensitive to certain decibels or tones as well, so maybe a high-pitched voice makes the child feel kind of bothered, or hearing something really, really loud like a big crash will help make them feel bothered as well. They may have difficulty sleeping if they're easily awakened by sensory stimuli too. They may be easily distracted by sounds, might have difficulty focusing on one sound, or cannot organize all information coming in. So it can be difficult to focus at times in group or school-based tasks if they're unable to filter the proper auditory information that they need. You can also have hyposensitivity. So this kind of child may not process what is being said to them, and they may not respond when asked a question or when their name is stated because their auditory system is not registering the things that they are hearing as adeptly as others. So because of this, children sometimes may take a little bit longer time to respond. So if you see a child, you've mentioned something to them and they are just staring at you for a minute before they respond, it's probably because it's just taking them a little bit longer to realize what you were saying in order for them to respond appropriately. At times, children who underprocess auditory information may actually seek more auditory info as well to get that input that they need. So, for example, a child may like to listen to things louder or have to have music or other auditory stimuli on for longer periods of time. They may need you to repeat things more often so that they can appropriately process stuff as well. So there are a lot of things in occupational therapy that we can do to address auditory processing. And I'm also going to go over a couple of strategies and sensory tools that you guys can use at home as well with your kids if they do have some difficulty with the auditory processing. Timers are also great to use for kids who have some auditory processing difficulties because they are very loud and can help draw attention to a transition if a child has difficulty hearing what the teacher or the parent is saying when they are needing to transition from one activity to another. So just having a timer can be really, really helpful for a child if they are having difficulty with that. Also, providing a child with a visual schedule if they have difficulty remembering what they were told due to that poor auditory processing can be another great sensory tool. So you can see that up in the picture here. There are tons of these little images on the internet, so the opportunities are honestly endless, and you can create your schedule to meet whatever needs your child has, no matter what age. There are additional strategies that I'm going to talk about here too, so recording auditory information on like a phone or any kind of recording device that a child is able to use can be helpful if they need to go back and re-listen to that information in order to process it appropriately. The same thing goes for writing or typing some auditory input. They can come back to that later and reread it and have a better visual of, what is it that I was hearing that I need to process in my brain. Reading books can also be a really good strategy to help children with auditory processing. It also has those visual components that they can look at, so they are starting to draw a better connection to what they're hearing is the same as what they're able to see. Additionally, if a child is having difficulty with this, having them repeat information back to you as a parent to reduce any confusion is also beneficial. So if you say something to them and they seem to not really understand what you're saying, repeating things to them and then having them repeat them back to you can really help with that auditory learning and understanding of what is going on. Other things that you can do for your child are lowering the volume of a stereo, TV, or phone if the child is hypersensitive to auditory stimuli, so as not to cause distress within the home. If that child has difficulty, like I mentioned before, with sleep, closing windows to eliminate environmental sounds and even like utilizing a white noise at night can be really helpful for a child if they're overly sensitive. So those are just some techniques that you can use at home with your child. The last thing I'm going to talk about here briefly is just wanted to mention that myself and a couple of my colleagues have just discovered this system called Soundsory that is a very effective multisensory listening system, and it utilizes the tomatis method, which incorporates classical rhythmical music and movement activities to complete simultaneously, and it utilizes an air and bone conducting technology to provide vestibular input for enhanced processing, coordination, and regulation. So this system has been very helpful for a lot of our patients. We have found that they become a lot more regulated, a lot more focused during activities in therapy, and you can find more information about it in the link in the description of this video. It's pretty expensive, so if you're not wanting to purchase it for your child, why don't you ask your occupational therapist if they'd be willing to incorporate it into therapy for a trial first. We would love to help you out with it at Colorado Springs Therapy Center. If you have any questions, please let us know and go ahead and like and subscribe.